I'm not sure if this video will be helpful, but it seems a lot of people struggle with how to connect their pond pump to their filter. So in this video, I'm going to try and show you that it doesn't matter what type of piping, tubing or plumbing you're using, there should be an easy way to connect it to your pump. This is directed more at people that are building their own filters. Store-bought external filters should come with good instructions. You're already overpaying for the filter, so you should get decent instructions. Through the video, I'll give some examples from my ponds so you know what to look for in the hardware or plumbing shop. I might even throw in a few handy design tips at the end of the video. If you don't already know me, my name is Kev, and the aim of my channel is to help people build and maintain ponds without spending a fortune. If that sounds like something that interests you, you might like to subscribe and visit my website, Ozponds.com. So all we really need to do is get water from the pond to the filter and then back into the pond. In my opinion, this is always easiest if the filter sits at a higher elevation than the pond. There are things like under-gravel filters, in-pond filters, but I'm not going to get into those in this video. There's also other things to consider like pump placement, but I don't want to get bogged down in that here. I'll link another video if that's something that you want to learn more about. The reason I like the filter above the water level of the pond is that the water can be pumped up into the filter and then gravity will turn the clear water back into the pond. Almost in every situation, the easiest way to connect the pump is with a flexible pipe. This is because every submersible pond pump I've ever purchased comes with a barb type fitting that allows the hose or tubing to be slid over the barb fitting. Some of the larger capacity pumps will come with socket fittings that screw into the pump and allow rigid pressure pipes to be glued into the socket. But even flexible PVC piping can be glued into rigid plumbing fittings. To do that, you just use regular plumber's glue. Here you can see the flexible pipe glued into rigid PVC elbow fittings. If you are going to be gluing the fittings, you want piping or tubing with a smooth outer surface. Often there are times when we want to go from flexible pipe to a rigid pipe or vice versa. If you are using a flexible hose, say one with ridges or ribs that cannot be glued, you probably want to look at a PVC socket fitting that has a thread that you can then screw in a barbed fitting. Now you can connect the rigid pipe to the flexible pipe. The reason that you might want to use rigid pipe is that it's far cheaper than the flexible PVC. Also, in bog filters, which is my favourite type of DIY pond filter, I want something that is strong. Because we're using rock and pebble inside the filter, I don't want to crush a flexible pipe. Therefore, you'll often see that I use rigid pipe in my bog filters, but flexible pipe from the pump to the filter. Now, the threads on the fittings can be different. For example, I can't connect this threaded socket fitting directly to this threaded barb fitting. Both are male. They need to screw into something. I'm not being rude, it's just called a male thread. Therefore, I need a coupling. This coupling has two female threads that can receive the male threads. So no matter what type of thread you have, there is a way to connect it. This barb fitting needs a female socket. This one needs a male socket. We also want to consider how we will remove the pump. From time to time, the pump needs to be removed and cleaned. Here on these pumps, I've used a rubber coupling with some stainless steel hose clamps. On this one, the rigid pipe is so snug that I didn't need to glue it, so I can just pull the fittings apart if I need to remove the pump. And this one has a hose clamp on it, but there's a lot of play in the hose, so I can lift it out. I could also just undo the hose clamp and remove the hose completely if I needed. A lot of the time I keep the plumbing lines and connections inside the liner or container that is the pond. That way the connections can be a bit loose and easily removed, but I'm not worried about a leak. If it leaks, it just leaks into the pond or the filter, and that's no big deal. Sometimes the pumps might need to be outside the pond. If there's enough interest, I can make a video on that. But in that situation, you'll probably want to use something like a barrel union so that you can remove the pump from the rigid plumbing. You want to make sure this is nice and tight, because outside of the pond, you certainly don't want a leak. Another thing I see a lot, if your bog is a container, the outflow should be sized larger than the inflow. That's because the water being pumped in is under pressure and the water leaving is only powered by gravity. You should also always have a method of preventing siphoning if the pump shuts off. You can use a check or one-way valve, but I find these often fail in these low pressure settings. I much prefer to add a breather hole to prevent siphoning. I'll link a video to that if you want to learn more. I'll also add links to all my DIY ponds if you want to see the full builds for ideas on how the filters were connected to the pond. At the end of the day, all we need to do is get the water from A to B, and no matter what type of plumbing you use, there's going to be a way to connect it to your pump. I really don't know if this video was helpful. I hope it was. If it was, feel free to tickle the thumbs up button. Thanks for watching. See ya.